And we also think you can't have it all. So I hear that a lot in my work. And the answer is more nuanced than that. And really what it needs is the redefinition. So redefining what it means to have it all is something that I've been really passionate about for a long time. I do kind of want it all, right? I just want my version of all. And my version of all is probably pretty traditional, but I do want it all. And so redefining what that means for me it came down to this phrase, a big, full life with the freedom to enjoy it.
Hey, Nicole, what do you get when a former corporate CEO and a do-gooding executive walk into a recording studio?
Well, Erin, nothing, because the two of us are usually on my couch or Zoom, because wine.
You get a podcast created for Gen X women who are bought into the corporate world, but fed up with the BS.
I know. It's how to thrive the 9 to 5 or 6 or 7.
It's career therapy. It's comedy. It's definitely full-on authenticity. Basically, we give you tangible strategies to rise in your career without compromising everything else.
Because work doesn't have to suck.
Well, 5.5 years into this podcast thing, and it finally happened. Luckily, it was the first time, but I had my first recording, not recording. So we had to stop the recording about a third of the way in. There was something going on with my mic. Got back on and talked to our guest, Cherylanne Skolnicki, solid 30 minutes without hitting record. So God bless her. You better listen to this one because we got right back on and recorded in an authentic way. And she brought so much value. Cherylanne is the CEO of Brilliant Balance. She also has a podcast by the same name. It's amazing. I was on it. She is literally one of the top 3 hosts I've ever talked to. And Cherylanne is on a mission to redefine what it means to have it all. And I'm telling you, she's not a fluffy BS prep person. She talks about it in a way that made me just like, and she defines it, not to steal all the thunder, but she defines it as having a big, full life with the freedom to enjoy it. So here's some of the things that we talk about. We talk about how you need to diagnose why you are doing certain things for your kids. We definitely go through a kid's rabbit hole. That's our first discussion point. We also talk about this cognitive overload, which is the terminology that I hadn't really heard before. Why that's really holding us down and what are the tangible steps that you can take to unload the overload. We also talked about the impact of us often thinking that future us is kind of a loser. Freaking love that. So she talks us through why we do that, what we do, and what we can stop doing. She also talks about the invisible belief that I bet you have, a lot of people have, regarding your overfull work plate. And she talks about how to change that. That was a really, really important conversation. And then we also talk about an example of when her client took the specific steps we're talking about to have this big, full life with the freedom to enjoy it. And get more balance. And the story involves pink. So you got to listen to that. So without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Cherylanne Skolnicki. So I have been dying to talk to you.
Good.
And here's why for the last couple of weeks. I want to start with this. I listened to a podcast, The Daily, which is a New York Times podcast.
Yes.
Well known. And they did an episode a couple of weeks ago titled The Parents Aren't All Right. And actually they spell all right, A-L-L, space, right? So, but they also mean aren't okay.
Yeah.
And in that, they talked about this concept of intensive parenting. And the stat that just blew my mind was that women in the 70s spent less time with their children. Women in the 70s who did not work, spent less time with their children than working women do today.
I read this article. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
I want to get your perspective. I mean, you're all about balance. Like, let's start there. What do you think about, sort of that article, that stat, and how is that sort of playing into, our lack of balance and challenges that you often coach on?
I mean, I think it just comes down to the word expectations, don't you? I think that what has changed is not children. Children haven't changed, not us. I think what's changed is expectations. And I think that this is one woman's point of view on it. It's what you asked for. The opening up of the door to say the opportunities are infinite. You can do anything you want to do, right? What career do you want? Do you want to have children or not? How many do you want? All of the options are on the table, which they just weren't a generation ago, right? I mean, my mom is 81. She was still definitively of the generation where you had a few options. You could be a teacher, you could be a nurse, you could be a secretary, like a few options, or you could stay home. And I think, yes, we had people in that generation trailblazing, and I love to hear it and love to read about the stories, but in general, pretty limited menu. By our generation, we had an unlimited menu. What do you want? And we interpreted that as, I will take all of it, please. And I'm going to hold the same standard that I would have held by taking just a few things or not choosing some things at all. I'm going to take all of it, and the expectations didn't lessen anywhere. So we're carrying, the sort of traditionally male expectations of excellence at work and financial provision, along with the expectations of being really involved, engaged parents. In fact, to prove, I think, to everyone that we can do both, we're going to do it all backwards and in high heels, so to speak. So the expectations are that's our nemesis, and we do not know how to lay them down.
Yeah, I think it's so right. And when I was listening to that, this concept of intensive parenting, the explanation was that it has some good things. There's been so much research over the years that, an example was, instead of letting your child watch a program, sit next to them and talk about it. And right. And they sort of laughed about it. Like, that is the only time usually we have to make dinner or, take a shower. But also didn't talk much. I'm a very sort of holistic thinker. So my flippant, sarcastic person is always like, yeah, you can do all those things, but if you end up divorced because you're miserable and overstretched, like what have you given your children? Not them.
Something gives.
Right. Something gives. So what can we put on our list of things? So I want to stay in the parenting side first, then we'll head over to the work side of, like, you don't have to do these. Like, you don't got a list for parents. Like, is this something that's ever come up in your coaching? And what are some thought starters for people listening? Like, you don't gotta blank.
Well, I think the premise to me that sits underneath all of it is we're already not doing everything. We just are focused on the things we think we have to do, right? It's kind of like you get in hyper-focus on a small collection of things, or a medium or a large collection of things that you think you have to do. It's like the roles we've taken on feel like they come with a set of rules, right? The rules of being a good mom are, I will put dinner on the table every night. I will check my children's homework. I will make sure that they get out of bed on time and to school on time. I will drive carpool. I mean, but the list that I rattle off, if you put me in a room with a notebook and you in a room with a notebook, they're not going to be identical. There's going to be a lot of overlap. Okay. So there's already things that you don't think you have to do to be a good mom that I do, and vice versa.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And the reality of that is that we get hyper fixated on our own list, and then it grows because we get inspired by someone else who we hear is doing this thing, or we see them on Instagram posting about doing it, and we're like, I should do that. So the visibility to how other people are doing it, we keep, like, I say, we pick it up like a lint roller, these expectations, like we're just adding them all the time, but we're never curating the list. So specifically, right? Not everyone feels compelled to make dinner for their family every night. They just don't. I work with enough women to tell you that that is an expectation that some women hold themselves to at a very high standard, and some do not. Some are like, there is food in this house, figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. How did you grow up? Did you grow up with a parent making dinner every night?
Oh, so my parents were teachers and my mom taught locally, and so I felt like she did, but I actually say all the time, I remember like bellying up to the bar in our old house and having, the pot pie
Sure.
from, the microwave or the oven, the toaster oven, on a
that
regular
counted.
basis, right? Like,
Yes.
it wasn't always a well-curated
Gourmet meal.
gourmet.
Right.
Yeah.
So just stick with cooking for a second, because I think this one is just riddled with
Oh,
expectations.
yeah. And I hate cooking. So let's do it.
Perfect. And I love it. Right. So it's going to be
Yeah.
a great duality, because I grew up with a mom who loved to cook and I love to cook. And so cooking a meal is something that feels important to me, and I continue to do it. Right. Most nights I'm going to put a meal on the table that I made. But I also know that if you look culturally, the arrival of ready-made meals, right? TV dinners when we were kids, all the way to this massive frozen section, and now the prepared food or HelloFresh or whatever. There are so many ways to put a meal on the table. So the question is, like, where is your standard that you're comfortable with saying, like, yes, people need to eat, but is my responsibility there needs to be food in the house? Or is my responsibility, I am going to plate a dinner that includes a protein and a vegetable, and you know what I'm saying? Big
Yeah.
range of how to
Yeah.
get that one thing done. And I think I don't do crafting at all.
Mm.
I do not do
I
a
don't do
craft.
that either. I don't know
Okay.
what I do, but I don't do that either.
You're like, those are two things. And yet, it's delightful that people want to do art projects with their children. I that was never going to be my thing.
Yeah.
So I was content. I mean, I felt a little bad about it from time to time, but I was like, that's not something that they're going to get with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually reflected on this a little bit in my latest book. And one of the things I think I said something like your other families' rubrics are not yours to score against. And my reflection, because when we write, we reflect, we don't necessarily know, we learn a
That's
lot.
right.
For me, yeah, it was, we don't always sit around a table and have a family dinner. I don't craft, but I love sports, and I have, both my son and my daughter love sports. And so our sort of bonding is, Monday night football and Sunday
There you
football
go.
and UConn basketball. And the positives that come out of that, not only the connection with all of us, but like I jokingly, like my daughter has a boyfriend, and I got to imagine like that's got to be a knock in her favor of,
She knows a lot about. Yes, she
yeah.
can
I mean,
talk
she's
the
cute,
talk.
she's smart, and she's funny, but she also knows football. So I think that how much do you think plays into this our wanting to sort of not even please, but look good in front of other parents,
I mean,
other
a
people?
lot of it. Yeah. I think there are a few emotions that we are more or less prone to depending on our wiring.
Mm.
So the idea of managing the perception of ourselves is really important. I mean, it's important to everyone, but it is really, really important to certain personality types and personality predispositions. Contrast that with, for example, another motivator could be guilt, which is going to be more strongly felt by people who are people pleasers and really interested in like not inconveniencing anyone else or compromising anyone else's experience. So let's take cooking. Your motivation for doing it can be, how does this look if my kid goes to school and says, oh, I ate a, frozen pot pie last night? Or your motivation could be, my poor child had to actually heat up their own dinner. I can't ask them to do that. They're so busy with homework and so busy with sports. You're right. You hear the difference.
You have
The motivation's different based on kind of how we're wired, but the behavior's the same. We're still doing everything ourselves.
That is so interesting. So I had that happen about a month ago. Both of the kids had their orientation first at middle school, and then the next night at high school for my daughter. And in both cases, like I didn't go. My husband went to both last year, but he was traveling this year. He was in Oregon. And I remember the conversation with my daughter. She had to work, so they don't go anyway. And I said I was going to go. She's a really, really good student. She's a junior, so I know the school. And I remember if I went, I couldn't make dinner for the boys who were late at soccer practice. And my husband was around. But anyway, the conversation, like what you said, just resonates so much. At the end of the day, Ella was like, "Why are you going? You don't have to go." She said a couple times, "You don't have to go," and I'm like, "No, I'm going to go because I want to be a good mama." And when she said, "Why are you going?" I didn't have.
Well, it's kind of,
I didn't have a good answer.
Right. And sometimes I do think a lot of people's answer would be, well, what will those teachers think?
And that's what it was. Like, what will the teacher, what will the other parents like?
And your parents were teachers.
Yeah.
So my mom was a teacher, and I have that noise in my head of what would teachers think, because, they notice, right, who's there and who's not. And that noise can be real, especially if you care about the perceptions that others have. There is an importance of understanding what's your driver, what's underneath it for you, because if you want freedom from that, if you want to be able to do fewer things or make different choices or do them less often, if you don't understand the underlying driver, it's going to continue to get in your way.
Hey, Erin here. So I know we talk often about this concept of authenticity as a secret weapon to success. I swear to you, my authenticity was literally the number one thing that helped me become both the CEO of a 9-figure company at the age of 42, but also that helped me lead an insanely successful financial and cultural turnaround of that same company. But I get that authenticity as a secret weapon kind of sounds fluffy, like fluffy unicorn doo-doo that leaves you wondering, what do I actually wake up tomorrow and do differently without looking stupid or getting fired? This is exactly why I put together the Authenticity Playbook for you. It gives you 10 plays or really thought starters that are simple, actionable things that will help you up your career and leadership game. To get your free Authenticity Playbook, go to beauthenticinc.com/playbook. Again, that's beauthenticinc.com, just the letter B, authenticinc.com/playbook. Or to make it simple, just scroll down to the show notes and we've got you covered with a link there too.
All right, people. All right. So I've been doing a podcast for 5.5 years. This is a first. We had some mic issues, so we jumped off and jumped back on because that's my technical knowledge capset reboot. And we seem to have managed that. But I then talked to Cherylanne for another 30 minutes without hitting record. So we are both going to recreate our conversation without recreating our conversation, because that would be really inauthentic. But let me just tell you, it's like Back to the Future. There's some good shit you're going to hear. Like, I could even tell you some of the phrases, but I'm not going to, because
Let's see if I can use them again.
You can see it. Yeah. Right. I have them written down. So if not, I will tell
Okay.
you in your past life. So what we were doing when we came back on was, I had gone down a rabbit hole of the parenting thing because it was top of mind and because it's like something that eats at me all the time. So thank you for letting me indulge. But
Sure.
I want to go backwards to Brilliant Balance, which is your company and your sort of mantra and your focus with, helping women have it all. And tell us about this first. This cognitive overload is something that you had said that I either heard or read that like stopped me in my tracks. So is that one of the major things that people are facing that sort of holds them back from balance? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So I think I talk a lot about cognitive load as like just a psychological construct, right? The technical term is just having a lot on your mind. And I think most women today would identify with, we have a lot on our mind. I think this is what some people have called like the mental load of motherhood. I mean, we have a lot on our minds all the time. But I think that what really drives up the cognitive load that we're carrying is unmade decisions. So one of the things that I am forever talking to my clients about and our community about is when we have certain decisions that we sort of resist making and they're running on like an open loop in our minds, that takes up a lot of brain space. And so I would refer to that as high cognitive load. So we have to think about, are there decisions that we can make that we're just resisting making that free up some headspace so we can think about other things or just have a little bit of breathing room in there, right?
Give us an example.
Yeah. And I think there's big examples and I think there's small examples. So a big example might be, there were a couple of times in my career where I quit a job, right? Like even for a short period of time, I took 1 year maternity leaves. When I took those maternity leaves, I was able to turn off all of the levers associated with that role for about a year. So I wasn't getting emails. I wasn't on project teams. I wasn't having to make decisions about brand spending, right? Everything connected to that just went to zero. If I were sitting on a nonprofit board and I made the decision to leave that position, I'm not going to those meetings. I'm not having to make those decisions. I'm not involved in fundraisers. Right? Like everything that's swirling in my mind about that plate just goes to zero. It turns down the noise. So cognitive load, if we want to lessen it, we can take some big decisions like, should I stay on this board or not? I mean, I don't know if I want to be on it anymore. If we just make the decision, you can get back all the headspace, right? There's also smaller ways to do that. Like there's decisions that we wrestle with of like, I don't know, do I need a different Zoom setup? Right? Like in the world that you and I live in, people are like, right, okay, should I do something different behind me? What could I do? I'm looking at options. I'm like, all of that is like swirling around on lighting and microphones and backdrops and all the things. And then you make the decision, boom, all that headspace comes back. It's available for something else. Okay. So the unmade decisions are driving up the cognitive load. So is feeling like we have to make all those decisions ourselves and that they're ours to make, right? I think we don't do a great job of spreading that burden across some other people, maybe in our households or maybe in our companies. And that's another way that we can definitely lighten our own cognitive load.
I heard something this time that I didn't hear the last time, which hopefully
Yay.
is a little more interesting for you. But this concept that maybe it's not just that we're doing too many things, but that our head is filled with too many things and that we have the ability to do that is so powerful. And I also think that it's motivating. Like just the little example you said about different Zoom thing, or like I was laughing about my mic. I've had it for 4 years. It's in my head. It's very small shelf space, but like, should I get a new? Should I get a new mic? And when we take action, our reward is that overload, that cognitive overload gets reduced.
So think about how notoriously bad we are at making decisions, right? I mean, most women will sort of in a self-deprecating way be like, oh my God, I'm so terrible at making decisions. And I do think stereotypically, like we buy into that narrative, but that has a cost. Not being good at making a decision or just maybe not being decisive and willing to kind of place your bet and move on, right, causes us to think and rethink and overthink a lot. It can have roots in perfectionism for sure, but that is a massive driver of cognitive load. Just go to like Amazon and try to buy something, right? You're going to go try to buy a new microphone. You're like, which one am I going to buy? How much research am I going to do? Who am I going to source input from? Look at all these minor nuances of difference that, there's infinite options for everything, every decision we're trying to make these days.
Yeah. You also talk about work-life balance differently. I think everybody says that, it's not balance, it's whatever. Nobody wants to sort of rest on work-life balance, but you said something, protect your freedom. So freaking powerful. Tell us more about
yeah. So I really don't love being told that work-life balance doesn't exist, probably because I run a company called Brilliant Balance, right? Like it's not a great opening line. But most people have decided like it's some fantasy, right? Work-life balance doesn't exist. And we also think you can't have it all. So I hear that a lot in my work.
Sure.
And I just think that the answer is more nuanced than that. And really what it needs is like, it needs a redefinition. So redefining what it means to have it all is something that I've been really passionate about for a long time. I do kind of want it all, right? I just want my version of all. And my version of all is probably pretty traditional, but I do want it all. And so redefining what that means for me it came down to this phrase, a big, full life with the freedom to enjoy it. And because
say that again.
Yeah, a big, full life with the freedom to enjoy it. Because both halves of that matter, right? I want a big life. I don't want, most of the women I know who are ambitious and smart and driven, like we don't want small, tiny little lives that have been stripped down to like a level of manageability that's like almost boring, right? It lives like so deeply in our
compromise. We've compromised.
Settled.
Yeah, settled.
Yeah. right? And I think the only reason we're doing that when we do it, and I've done it at certain phases in my career, is because we haven't found where the pendulum needs to settle for us, right? There's an overcorrection. So my life at one point got too big and too full and too 24/7 and too global. And I was like, this is not working for me. I don't want to do 2 a.m. conference calls, right? And then it can swing too far in the other direction because it's a natural retraction. We're like, I got to correct for this. And we can get too small, right? I had a job at one point where I was working 60% at P&G, and I was like locking my laptop in my desk at night. And I was like, there's nothing going on here. Like, I'm not stimulated enough by this role. So the pendulum can swing too far. What we want is we're trying to find that middle ground, dare I say balance, right? Where we have a big full life, but we still have some freedom and time and energy and headspace to enjoy it. And so that's the definition I'm chasing for myself and within our community.
So what does that look like before and after? Maybe give an example of a client, and then maybe we can reverse engineer, like, how the heck did they
do that?
Do it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, so I think a good person to talk about here would be Sarah. Sarah is is a client in our community. And, the before picture is like a big corporate legal job with a commute, with a lot of pressure and responsibility. She's been an attorney for a long time. She has 3 teenage children. She was sitting on the board of a nonprofit that she had been kind of subtly trying to get off of and couldn't really figure out how to extricate herself from, because she loved it. Like, she loved the mission of the organization. It started off, as it always does, as like something she wanted to do, right? And she was raising these kids and had aging parents. They're like, this is like, I could be describing an imaginary person as I'm saying this, but like, it's a real human. So all of those things are like the before picture. And when somebody crosses paths with me, we're often kind of looking at, okay, what's not working here? Like, what do you not have that you want more of in your life? And I'm very focused on that, because nobody wants less of anything.
Yeah.
Right? When we start, we're not like, oh, I really want less of all. It's, well, what are you not getting to?
So with the positive, yeah.
Yes. And because that's the motivator for making any kind of change. We have to be steering towards something better. So ultimately, like, I've been working with Sarah for a few years, honestly, probably like 5. And where we are today is she's working in a legal job, but she's able to work primarily from home, does not have the commute. She's able to split her time between, they are lucky enough to have a beach house, and they spend their time at this, little beach cottage that they love, and their home that's in the city. She has, been able to get off of the board of the nonprofit because we crafted a plan for her to be clear but kind, right? About saying, this is no longer something I am going to do. And so we need a plan as an organization to replace these responsibilities. Here is like my sunset plan. This is how I'm going to get out. And they accepted that plan. She was actually like shocked when it finally went through, and they finally accepted her resignation from that. And I think it opens up all kinds of possibilities. I mean, she put a Facebook post in our group of, she had spontaneously accompanied her husband on a business trip to London. And I think she took one of the girls too. She has twin girls, and, posted the pictures of that. She told us at an event that, and this is one of my favorite stories because everyone in the room was emotional about it. She had had a long day, and one of the daughters texted like, hey, let's go see Pink. But it was like that night, it wasn't like a concert off in the future. And Sarah was like, the old me would have been like, I can't go. I mean, I have work and we have things tomorrow. And she said, I just looked at that text and I was like, let's do it. And they got the tickets in the car on the way to the concert, got there in time for Sheryl Crow, who was the opening act. And like, she'll have that memory for the rest of her life. Right. And what I said to the women at our event when Sarah told that story is, we all would say we want that, but how many of us would do it? Right? How many of us would actually that night be like, let's go, versus, oh, I have this deadline tomorrow. I'm going to be tired. I'm going to whatever. So the freedom part, really keeping that front and center of what does it look like to really enjoy your life? And I think about what I said to the women at the event that day was, we got to live the story we want to tell. And that's the story she gets to tell now forever because she made that decision.
Yeah, I think too often we don't think about the things we're not doing as sort of trading cards for things we can do, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe wouldn't have had a board meeting that night, but maybe she would have been stressed about something else and not been able to go. But there is some trade there.
Yeah.
So powerful. You know, one of the things you also talk about that really hit me is this concept of anticipatory stress. Jesus, yes.
Right.
Tell us more what this is and how do
Yes.
we manage it?
What do we do about it? More.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we just really think that future us is kind of a loser who isn't going to be able to handle whatever comes her way. At least that's my story. I tend to live in the future. I'm very future oriented. So good news is I don't spend a lot of time ruminating, but I do spend a lot of time sort of fussing about what's coming. And this pattern really revealed itself to me when I realized, like, when I'm fully immersed in something, I'm not very stressed. Like, I can be in this conversation with you, I'm not feeling stressed, right? I can be in the next meeting I have and I won't be feeling stressed in the meeting. But when I start looking at what's coming, right, my to-do list, my calendar, it's almost like I'm experiencing the emotions of those future events as like an avalanche today.
Mm.
So that's what I mean by anticipatory stress. It's like this anxiety or stress that's coming from all of the things in the future, but I'm feeling them as though the weight of them is on me today. That's a heavy load. Okay. So in calendar control, which is one of the early exercises that I do with people, one of kind of the more basic things, one of the exercises is always looking out about a week at your calendar to see what's coming. And if you're feeling that onslaught of stress, being able to do two things. One is curate your calendar, right? Get some stuff off of there. If you're like, I have bitten off more than I can chew, and I can already tell you that. And the other thing is to take to try to get as much relief from having something scheduled as you have from having it done. So think about the relief we feel when we're like, check done, right? We love that. We're like little addicts to our to-do list. Can you get almost as much relief? It's never going to be quite as much of going, I know I'm doing that next Thursday.
Yep.
So I don't have to be stressed about it today because it's happening next Thursday, right? And you take like a little field trip out to the future, and then you come back to the present moment and you go, and where am I right now? And what am I going to be about? And what am I going to be fully in? Whether that is the work that you have, or whether it is your kid's soccer game, or making dinner, or seeing a friend for coffee, or going for a walk, getting to be all in that moment instead of ruining every one of those moments by worrying about the thing you're going to do next Thursday.
Yeah. What would you say to so many of our listeners, though, that are like, yeah, but Cherylanne, I'm in a meeting. I've got a Slack message coming in. I got urgent emails. I am flooded with future me, and it's not me that's doing it. What do I do?
Well, I had a conversation with my 19-year-old daughter just over the weekend about notifications. And I will admit that she is atypical in her use of her phone. She's actually really somebody who tries to set pretty stringent standards on how much time she's spending on her phone. And I will definitely agree that is atypical for a 19-year-old. However, we did sit together and try to turn off even more notifications on our phones, right? Notifications are like the antithesis of being present. If I'm sitting here talking to you and my watch starts buzzing me literally, right, with notifications, or if they're coming onto my screen, it's almost impossible to stay calm and grounded in this moment. And most of those notifications that we are getting, I do not need to know right this second, right? So some systemic change that allows us to like batch those notifications, like when I go into Slack, I will deal with whatever is going on in Slack instead of it's coming at me when there's nothing I can do about it right now anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not to mention that a lot of us are getting notifications for like, your third grade best friend posted this on Facebook. Like, who cares right now, right? There's a line of how many we can turn off to just kind of tamp down our nervous systems a little bit. And it really annoyingly does come back to trying to stay fully present.
Yeah.
It's not the answer anyone ever wants to hear.
Yeah.
Hey there, it's Erin. I'm just popping in real quick to ask you a question. Is there any chance you know someone who is looking for a keynote speaker for their upcoming event? Look, I know that many event organizers, they struggle to find a speaker who provides both tangible value and business knowledge, but that also lights their audience on fire. And I truly believe there aren't many speakers like me out there who are both former corporate executives and professionally trained speakers. And there's definitely none that roll in with an orange suitcase they unpack with their audience. Trust me on that. I would love nothing more than to bring my message of using authenticity as your strategic career and business advantage to people spinning in your universe, especially if you'd be there. I promise my talks always create an immediate buzz, but not just right after, but for months and years after the event is over. You can learn more about my message, style, and reviews, and share my speaking info by going to beauthenticinc.com/keynote-speaking. That's B, just the letter B, authenticinc.com/keynote-speaking. Or of course, we have it right in the show notes to make it easy for you too.
Can you weigh in on what I think is, the biggest issue we're dealing with in the workplace? And I think it started back when we had the financial crisis and companies were forced to do their first massive layoffs. And they're like, oh, people can kind of do 2 jobs at once. And now we're at like 3 jobs at once. What do you say to that person that's like, yeah, but you don't understand, Cherylanne. People have been laid off around me. I have, I'm either leading and also doing, or I'm doing the work of 3 people. How the frick do I get to balance? Like, it's just not going to happen. And if I go somewhere else, it'll probably be the same. What would you say to them?
This is such a tender question, right? So I want to tread lightly so that I don't sound out of touch. And sometimes I'll say people hear me say something like what I'm about to, and they're like, well, that's adorable, Cherylanne. Like, it must be so great to live in your world with unicorns and fairies where, you can do things like that. But I live here in the real world, and I can't. And I think I live in the real world and I do have the benefit today of working for myself. And that comes with a lot of control over the boundaries that I set for my schedule or what I will and won't do. But I have a husband who works in the corporate world. I spent 15 years there, and most of my clients do, right? So I really am grounded in like what's going on. I think the biggest thing that is in our way is like an invisible belief that the people around us know what we're actually doing at work, specifically that our boss knows what we're actually doing. It's like we don't literally believe this, but it's this invisible kind of underpinning that it's as though our boss must have a camera on us all the time, following us around at work, following us around at home to see that we had to take our computer, to the lacrosse game in order to meet that deadline. And that we had to sit in our bed with the laptop until 2 a.m. to finish the deck for the meeting that was at 8. And I am telling you, they do not know. They do not know. Right? So there is a construct of work. It's like the work will keep coming until we say this is not viable anymore. This is not a workload that one human being can do within their work week. However you define it. I don't care if it's a 40 or an 80-hour work week. This is not doable, right? We're like, remember that I Love Lucy episode where I'm so old. This is how I'm showing how old I am. The conveyor belt's coming with all the candy on it, and she's like starts shoving the candy in her mouth because she's like, it's okay.
That's the only thing I can do
That's all I can do, right? That's what we're like with work. Yeah. We're like Lucy at the conveyor belt, just like, well, forget it. This is all I know how to do. I think you reverse that trend with some courageous conversations, right? First of all, I think everything we want is on the other side of a courageous conversation. I think it's like the ticket to so many things, but being able to sit down with your boss and say, listen, let's take a look at what you're asking me to do. And I get it. We need to get this stuff done. So here's how I would like to get it done, right? I'm going to need a contractor to do this. I've found one. This is what they're going to cost. I'm going to need an assistant to do this. This is what they're going to cost. This is going to have to wait for 2 months because it can sequence in behind this other project, right? Do you hear the strength in that narrative, right? That's not a weak narrative. But we don't have that conversation because we think our boss is going to think I'm an idiot, right? I'm going to be deemed incompetent. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get moved aside. When in reality, if we have that conversation the right way, we sound like a leader. We sound strong,
Yep.
right? We come with solutions. So look, there's nuance to all of this, and I wouldn't pretend to know anyone listening's exact situation. But if you're sitting in that situation where you're like, I'm doing 3 jobs and this is not, and you're just talking about it all day, every day, that goes back to that cognitive load. That, I promise you, is a part of what is weighing you down, is that there hasn't been an action yet to try to like offset the situation. So getting some support to craft that conversation and having it opens up a lot of.
It's so good. I mean, first of all, even leaders forget this, but your manager is probably managing 8 to 10 people and probably also doing their own job. And you don't know what they're doing, by the way. Right. They certainly don't know what you're doing. And I think your point about how it demonstrates a leader is so important. I think there is a subconscious weightier, 0% is the number of people that I promoted who worked their asses off. Like that just was not, like, that's not who
wasn't your criteria.
That wasn't my criteria. It was, strong conversations. People wanted to follow them, didn't always say yes, bobblehead, had their own opinions, right? And so I think the power to not only help get control of what you're doing, but to demonstrate you have some cojones, you have some leadership skills, I think is
I'm sure you
important.
Appreciated it if somebody went the extra mile, right? We all have those periods where it's like,
of course, you don't want the person where you're like, my boss really urgent, and they're like, sorry,
right.
I'm going on my lunch break, yeah.
Right. I mean, but the
that.
notion of like, we all know how to manage a surge, right? A busy season, a crunch, but we've ended up in like perma crunch. And so there's no end in sight. And that's why I think we're in a different place. If the dynamic in your workplace is that things ebb and flow, and you can ride those surges out and then say, I'm going to get some recovery, like I'm going to exert and then I'm going to have some recovery, great. But if the dynamic in your workplace is that it is permanent and this is the new level of how we operate all the time, there's no recovery coming. So we have to kind of create it, right? We have to get in and advocate for it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of working 2 to 3 times jobs, that's what you've done today on the podcast. So I appreciate that. But I do have 2 more questions for you. The first, we always ask people, what's your buck that story? Meaning, what is a time where you bucked the norm and good things happened?
I love your questions. So mine, probably the one I think about the most was the decision to take year-long maternity leaves.
Mm-hmm.
When I was working, I had a big job running a billion-dollar brand, and people did not think you did things like that, right? You were going to get mommy tracked and not get invited back. And that was not my experience. And it was really important to me. I had one leader ahead of me who I had seen do it. Honestly, her doing it was probably the thing that gave me permission to do it. Like in my own mind, she made it seem viable. And I have spoken to many women in the years since then who did it because they saw me do it. And that is a really powerful thing. I mean, it was important for me and for my family. It was an unpaid leave, right? These do not come easily. You have to really make room for them. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. And it was definitely not normal, but it was gratifying.
Yeah. And I think just when you can step outside of, these things that are tough decisions and say, hey, what if I do it not just for myself, but to inspire others? You have a little bit of slowdown, a little bit of, self-awareness that others need that permission. That's when things get really exciting.
Yeah.
I love that. Before I ask you the last question, what's the best place for people to follow you?
So probably the website is the jumping off point. So brilliant-balance.com will get you to anything that we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have a beautiful podcast. So when you're done, binging on Because Work Doesn't Have to Suck, flip over to Brilliant Balance as well. She's an amazing host. I was lucky enough to be on, and I honestly, one of the best hosts I've ever been on in the last 5 years. So really great podcast. So last question, what is your final tip to help people have work suck less?
I just succinctly said, exercise the control you have.
Mm.
I think we really underestimate the amount of control or agency that we have over not just our careers, but our lives. So if you want work to suck less and your life to suck less, like courageously using that control that would be my tip.
I love it. Well, I don't usually do this, but I just have to read back some of your one-liners. I don't know if you know these and you need to put these in a book. But there were so many things that you said that were just like mic drop moments. You said, protect your freedom, perma crunch. I love that. Field trip to the future. And then probably my favorite, because I love sassy stuff. You said sometimes we think future us is kind of a loser. So if that doesn't get you up off your rear and out making changes, I don't know what will. So thank you again, Cherylanne. This was really helpful. And thanks for sort of 2Xing.
No
Your
problem.
job
Thanks
today.
for having me.
Hey, it's Erin with a teeny request. If you have ever gotten any value from this podcast and you'd like us to stick around, plus you want it to continue to grow so we can kind of swindle bigger and more knowledgeable guests to join us and to keep providing you with tangible and inspiring actions you can take to achieve the career and life you deserve, could you please just take 1 minute to leave us a rating and a review? Those reviews go a long way in attracting guests to the show, and candidly, they really make Nicole and I's day. We see you. We really do. So when you have the time and inspiration, we'd love to see a rating and review from you. Thank you.